Hey guys, we've definitely met before. My name is Ashley Smith, and I'm here to address two components of my cultural identity. So, my parents owned a restaurant. Now, you may be thinking, restaurant owners. Well, they were working restaurant owners, and they also believed in the power of hard work for their children. So, at the age of 9, I started working in my parents' restaurant. I started off learning how to operate the cash register, and then not too long after that, I was standing on a milk crate slicing meat on a meat slicer. OSHA would literally die if they walked in on that. But one of the cool things about being raised that way is that I was raised among the employees that worked there. And the employees that worked there were in the lower class or at the poverty level. Now, this is Jonesboro in the 90s, okay? This is a pretty white town, pretty uniform culture. However, because my parents owned a restaurant, they hired who they could get. And that meant they hired a black man that couldn't read. They hired a gay man who wore purple bike shorts and swished his hips when he turned hot pastrami on the grill top. They hired college kids. They hired single moms who wore too much jewelry and too much perfume. They hired just an absolute menagerie of people that work there. And I was raised among them. So while we were squarely middle class, because my parents owned the restaurant, they were working restaurant owners. I worked in the restaurant alongside them, as did my sister, and we were raised alongside these people. I was exposed to completely different cultures, completely different experiences, completely different socioeconomic classes from my own. And that started at a very young age. And I became very, very comfortable being around people like that. I preferred that because those people are authentically themselves. They don't have any other way to be. When you have nothing, you are just you. And they are so much more interesting and funny, and they don't have two pennies to rub together, but they can have a good time. And I just have always preferred people like that. So I stayed in the restaurant industry. I stayed in the restaurant industry for the next, 25 years. I ended up becoming a server and working at a microbrewery and a bartender. And then I became a pastry chef. I got my pastry chef certification and I went to work in a high-end boutique hotel where I then designed menus for the hotel portfolio. I was an executive pastry chef. And I always preferred those experiences and working with people who others might look down on and feel like they're less than, but they're always the most interesting people, and they definitely shaped who I am. They made me crass, they made me loud, they made me not afraid to take up space, and it has absolutely shaped who I am. The other part of my personality was when I was 26, I was out partying. I was having a good time, and I found myself pregnant. So I wake up, throwing up. I can't figure out what's wrong. I think that I have the flu. Bam, pregnancy. Completely unexpected. Not on my bingo card for that year. I instantly, it was like a switch was flipped in my brain, and I was going to be a mom. Now, mind you, up to this point, I had been blowing and going and just I was making money waiting tables and bartending, and I would make cash and spend it as fast as I got it. And I was having the time of my life, and I was traveling and I was seeing the world and I was doing whatever that I was doing, some of it not so great, but it was fantastic. The second I found out I was becoming a mom, it was like everything changed. Like everything about me changed. And I was wholly unprepared for what that was going to do to me as a person. Because like I said, I was loud. I was not afraid to take up space. I could be crass. Still can be crass. Some of you have interacted with me personally. However, the day my daughter was born, I remember my brother said to me, "You need to hold a funeral for who you used to be. Because you are going to mourn the loss of that life, because who you are now is going to be completely different." And what motherhood has taught me is that all of the things I was geared towards previously, being very task oriented and efficient, and being under stress and under a load, a weight, and time crunches because of the restaurant industry and how I'd been living, which can be quite toxic, is that motherhood needs you to slow down. It needs you to be present. It is not a task to be ticked off on a to-do list. And I have to rectify those two things all the time. That how I've been living my life for the last 30 years versus now, this kinder, gentler, softer edged mother version of myself. I do very much enjoy it though. So, my two cultural identities are purple bike shorts, flipping pastrami like a queen, and changing diapers. Thanks, guys.